Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Speaking Skills for a Brighter Future. We're very excited to be here today. And first, as always, just a little housekeeping before we start. This session will be recorded and shared online via email after. So by attending, you are consenting to this. A Q&A will take place at the end of the session. Just type your questions in the chat at any point during the webinar, and we will endeavor to answer as many as we can. This is also a CPD webinar. You'll receive an email containing a link to a form. Fill out these details to get your certificate. Follow-up communications containing your recording and CPD certificate will be sent at the beginning of next week. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. So a little bit about the day, just to contextualize this for those of you who are unfamiliar with what the day does. We turn the news into lessons. Our vision is for every young person to find their voice. We coach life's most important skills by using the real world as our teacher. Making lessons out of news gives young people knowledge, confidence, and agency to think and believe in themselves. I'll be sharing a bit about the day later in the webinar, and we've actually launched our Black Friday offer this week, so stick around till the end of the webinar and learn how to redeem your discount. And of course, today we'll be focusing primarily on Oracy as a skill to be strengthened in young students. Now, some schools will just be starting to take notice of Oracy outside of the typical subjects Oracy is often associated with, like English. And due to the Oracy Commission report that's recently been published, teachers today might be curious about finding knowledge or support to get started. Well, you've come to the right webinar because that's exactly what today's hour sets out to do. This webinar will offer practical examples and advice for teachers looking to standardize Oracy across the full range of subjects in school, enriching a love for speaking and listening in every student. So the day and our guests who join us today, Tina Renshaw, Lauren Kearney, and James Pleasure, suggest Oracy always has been one of the most vital skills for bridging the educational gap for students. So thank you all of you for joining us today. We're so excited to have you here for a fantastic chat. And let's just get started. I'm going to give you a brief context on ESB, an organization that Tina Renshaw and Lauren Kearney will speak about today. Now, English Speaking Board International, FAB's awarding organization of the year 2023, ESB has over 70 years expertise in awarding accredited Oracy and English language qualifications. ESB's unique learner-centered Oracy assessment model, carried out by professional assessors, fosters confidence through supportive group assessments aligned with the national curriculum. Now, let me introduce our guests today so you know a little bit more about them. First, I'll start with Tina. Now, Tina has led ESB International since 2016. As I just previously mentioned, it's a specialist awarding organization assessing and awarding qualifications for Oracy and English language. Tina has a dynamic career in education across secondary schools, LEAs, not-for-profits, and technical and further education. A gifted communicator, graduate of Oxford University, founding member of the 93% Club, and an alumnus of Henley Business School. Now over to Lauren. Lauren is a qualified English teacher who has taught in a diverse range of settings, including state and independent schools, inclusion centers, and working one-on-one with learners at risk of exclusion. Currently, she serves as the senior assessor and senior product developer for Oracy at ESB International. And finally, James. James Pleasure is the assistant head teacher at The Grove, a secondary school in Market Drayton, Shropshire. He has been teaching for nearly 20 years and has been leading literacy and Oracy initiatives for more than a decade. In his current role, he created The Grove's Confident Communicators program, which has brought about a reduction in the proportion of students below age-related reading levels by more than a third across the school. So wow, welcome to you all. These are great backgrounds and we're so excited to speak to you. Now, at the start of every webinar, which we're beginning right now, we'd like to ask our audience a question to, again, help contextualize what we're going to be discussing today. So today's question in regards to Oracy is, what are the biggest challenges you've encountered when promoting Oracy within your students? Now, my team's going to put that up on the screen so you can answer it from home or from your office. And we're going to see that in a moment. Here it is. So The possible answers are a lack of confidence in speaking in front of others, limited vocabulary or language skills, inadequate time to dedicate to speaking activities, limited access to engaging resources students want to talk about, poor listening skills, or maybe something else that's specific to your school. So we'll give everyone a moment to answer that and think about that. And I'm sure a lot of those themes will come up in today's discussion. So here are the results. So 43% talk about a lack of confidence in speaking in front of others. And that's certainly something that always comes to the forefront when we think about oracy, limited vocabulary or language skills, and so forth. So I'm really excited to talk to everyone because I know this is exactly at the heart of why we're here today and what we're looking to address. So let's really just get right down to it. And Tina, if I may, let's start the chat today with a question for you. We're going to speak to everyone. And I think the question in my mind right now is, as an awarding institution, what are some of the biggest challenges you've encountered for different schools in their goal to boost oracy?
Thank you so much. Biggest challenges, I think, in boosting oracy that we encounter with our role as an awarding organisation has been in the past, what is oracy? Actually, people understanding what the term is, because the thing that we're now calling oracy has been called many things over its lifetime. It was many years ago called oracy, but it's been speaking and listening, communication skills, and all of those titles work for us. But there has been a challenge. What exactly is this thing? And are we in fact already doing it? The other big question for us has been, is it for everyone? Particularly in what we do in terms of awarding qualifications, is a qualification in oracy accessible to everybody? I mean, the answer is yes, and you're probably going to hear a lot of that from Lauren. But that was one challenge. So hopefully, with the Oracy Education Commission, the all-party parliamentary group on oracy a few years ago, we don't really need to have that challenge anymore. People have an understanding of what oracy is. I think the next one for us in our role was, how does it work in my school? How can it work in my school, given the context, whether I'm a primary school, a school with high pupil premium, a secondary school with high achieving pupils, a really broad background, whatever it might be. How do I do it in my school? How do I contextualize it? Because at the heart, we teachers are creative souls. We want to find something that not only lights our own views, but also is going to be relevant to our children, our young people that we teach. So for me, the other thing is making it relevant so that this isn't yet another thing that needs to be done from the student's perspective. And I think for us, the key of making it relevant is that it is a skill that everybody will use every day. You'll see great examples of it, hopefully in this webinar anyway. You'll see some good examples of it. You might see some shocking examples of it in your daily life. But how's it relevant? How does it, having that confidence, and that was the number one challenge, how is having that confidence so valuable? And how do you actually learn that skill? What does it take to learn that skill? So they're probably some of the challenges that immediately come to mind for me.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now I'm going to just move right to Lauren. How do schools use ESB resources? Like, could you maybe share a bit more about that?
Yes. So we've got a very versatile range of qualifications. So schools can integrate them in a range of different ways, really, to suit their unique context and their learners' needs as well. So at primary level, we often see schools will embed our qualifications into whole class teaching. So learners might develop their speaking and listening skills through a very structured program that integrates the qualification with their curriculum priorities. So it might be that they want to work specifically on building reading for pleasure within the school, and they can do that through our qualifications, through the elements of literature that are involved. They might do it in a more thematic project, so to match in with their curriculum in history or geography. We've just been working with a school on a research project who have replaced their opening year 4 unit, which previously had culminated in an assessed writing piece that they worked towards, and they have got rid of that and replaced it with a formally assessed, externally assessed speaking and listening piece. And so by doing that, they've been able to explicitly teach those speaking and listening skills, but also to work on their reading fluency, their teamwork, vocabulary building. And this is the feedback that we've had from the centre, is that they said that the activities in the assessments and the resources, which I'll talk about in just a minute, have helped their learners to do things we think happen, but it's really validating to hear it from centres that it does happen. So they said that their learners are more able to self-regulate effectively because they can name the emotions that they're feeling and how that feels when they're using their voice and using their body language, and that the experiences like improved their overall happiness and their overall well-being in school and their attendance and all these wonderful positive effects. And then at secondary level, there's even more opportunities then to tailor the use of our qualifications because they become quite diversified. So in year 7, we know one school is using our level 1 speech to inform qualification in English lessons, where learners create and deliver a talk, a news report and a persuasive argument on themes that they've drawn from a poetry unit that they are working on. In year 9, in another school, they're incorporating our level 2 speech for employability qualification as part of their careers program in PSHE. And then that's linked directly to their preparation for work experience. And then when we get up to 6th form, we know some of our schools are offering our level 3 grade 8 qualification as an optional subject for year 13, and also as a valuable alternative to the EPQ, so to the extended project qualification. So to support their university, their career applications, and they carry UCAS points. So to enable all of those different things. So one of the sort of cornerstones of ESB is this element of personal choice. And it's our central ethos, I like to call it. It's the most important thing. So like Tina said about making it relevant, within all of those contexts, our learners should have the freedom of choice to choose their topics, choose their books, their poems, their speeches, their news items, their product pitch, etc. Whatever it is they're going to talk about that matter to them. So not only does it make it more engaging, but then also helps those learners to connect really deeply with the process, gives them ownership, agency, and increased pride in their work. So we do have an increasing range of teaching resources. And I say increasing because we are constantly trying to develop more and have been for the last 2 to 3 years. So currently we've got them for the entry-level qualifications, for the level 1 pathway qualifications aimed at year 7, for level 3 post-16. And they support educators sort of in that explicit teaching of speaking and listening skills. So things like how to use pause and pace to create meaning for your audience, how to use your facial expression and your body language with subtlety to add meaning, how to identify barriers to listening, because we know that there are, we talked about some earlier, that, you know, maybe it's the background noise that you need to learn to overcome. Maybe it's that you need to remember to actually look visibly active, like you are listening. So those resources include lesson plans, PowerPoints, activity suggestions, workbooks, tips on how to assess and how to self-assess for learners. And everything is about teaching the skills, but also giving lots of opportunity to practice. So that's the other part of the equation, is giving that dedicated time in the classroom for learners to work together and to practice with one another and give each other feedback, which is sort of instrumental in them developing that confidence and the competence, which we know from our research that we have done is what really causes that fear that popped up as the most common thing, that being afraid to speak in front of each other. That's where that stems from, we found, is not having belief in their own subject knowledge, which is hopefully overcome by personal choice, but also those discrete skills, those discrete speaking and listening skills. I can go on if you like.
I think that's fascinating. No, I'd love to hear more. I was just going to say it's fascinating because you really, again, cut right to the heart of the emotions surrounding speaking. And there's fear, there's vulnerability, and these skills, these, you know, practicing personal choice, this gets right to the success of speaking by having really tangible ways of addressing these things. So no, I'm all ears. So yeah, I'd love you to keep going.
Excellent. Let me think. So the other thing that was already mentioned actually by Tina is that we do believe that Oracy is for everyone. And so this is the other way that schools are implementing our qualifications, is that we do have a wide range of qualifications, but not only that, so we have some that are specifically tailored towards learners with more profound SEND needs, particularly for post-16, but we do have centres who will use those to support learners in mainstream as well. So we might have a group of learners doing a level 1, grade 1, so which is sort of year 6, and then they might alongside that have a learner who is taking our entry level 2 communication via the arts, so where they will be able to talk about a piece of art that they've done, and to still be engaged in the same group. They can do it within the same group, they can do it in a separate group, it's really up to them. We also have some specialist qualifications for EAL learners, which are aligned to the CEFR, so the Common European Framework for the Reference of Languages. So that can happen alongside their peers. And we also are really passionate about making sure that all learners can access the assessments equally. So by applying reasonable adjustments, and by making sure that it doesn't matter what communication needs that learner has, they are still able to access the communication qualification because they can still communicate no matter what form that takes. So we might have a learner who's using British Sign Language who has an interpreter. We might have a learner who is on the spectrum, and therefore, you know, we're aware that things like eye contact might not be the way that they engage with the audience. And so we make sure that that is accounted for when the assessors are assessing them. I've got loads of examples of that, but I won't go on forever. And then, so I've got a really nice quote from one of our teachers, if that's okay, from our this research project we've just been doing, who said that allowing all of the learners to go on their own journey and to make progress from their own starting point has been something really valuable. And so they've seen that their learners who have more profound SEND needs have actually become more closely integrated with the rest of the class. So actually their social interaction on a daily basis has improved as a result of that constant communication, and that that they're all working together, and that their voices are all valued. So they said that where previously they might have thought, what's the point in me putting my hand up and offering an answer? Actually, now they think, I've got an answer. I can contribute. So that's been something really lovely for us to see. So yeah, so ultimately, we think that the flexibility of our qualifications is really what allows schools to tailor them to their individual needs. So the process isn't just an assessment, but it's like a meaningful part of the learner's educational journey.
That's really interesting. What really struck me, something you just said a moment ago, is this idea of sort of being in control, and this idea of having that agency over how you're progressing in this process. And I think, yeah, that speaks to, again, what you both said about confidence, just having more confidence and being able to practice and to speak, you know, and feel more comfortable, especially doing it in front of your peers. So this is really interesting, and we're going to come back to this because we have more questions throughout this this whole webinar. But let's maybe just go over to James right now and ask a quick question for you. James, you mentioned your Confident Speakers program.
Yeah.
This has always fascinated me because it's really interesting what you're doing. But could you tell us a bit more about the program at the Grove, and yeah, what your school is doing to promote Oracy? I'd love to know.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. So the confident speakers element fits into the confident communicators whole banner, and I've got a couple of tips which I'm going to go through, if that's okay, in a minute, about things I've learned from getting parts of the program right, and the many times when I got parts of setting these sorts of programs wrong. So I've got some tips from that. But the confident communicators program has 3 strands, and we've got confident speakers, confident readers, confident writers, and it's in that order of priority. So we've put the Oracy right at the front. We know that if we want students to, say, write like scientists or geographers or mathematicians. They need to be speaking, communicating like scientists and geographers and mathematicians first and foremost. So we put the way that children articulate themselves academically, orally, right at the front of what they're doing.
Wonderful. And yeah, I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit more how your school is, how the Grove is addressing Oracy and other ways you're promoting it as well? Anything?
Well, yeah, of course. I think I've got a number of tips I'd give, really, if that's okay, around setting up programs like this. I've tried to boil it down to about 7. So I'll go with those. Jump in when if I'm going on too much, but hopefully this is going to be helpful to the people who are on. When setting up programs such as these, this applies to quite a lot of leadership programs, but particularly Oracy, I'd say the first thing is to make it unique to your school, and that's done via your purpose. Don't use words like policy. Potentially avoid words like literacy. They have a tendency to turn off staff. Unfortunately, particularly staff who've been in the profession for a while. Policies don't make a difference of themselves. It's it's the people who've got enacting those policies. So the first thing I'd say is make it unique and understand your purpose, and that's what we've done. We've understood fully what our purpose is and what the unique need of the school was, and therefore what the unique opportunity that the staff had to make a change there. And part of that is informed by the Martin Luther King quotation of the fierce urgency of now. We felt this fierce urgency to act now, that there is such a thing as being too late. So it's really underpinned by purpose first and foremost. That's what makes the Confident Communicators program unique. It's underpinned by purpose, and that's why I love the day, because it combines those skills of oracy and literacy with what I see as a moral purpose about giving students the skills they need so that their choices and their actions are the overriding factors in determining their life chances, rather than lower levels of oracy or oracy skills, which are typically dictated as well in part by socioeconomic factors. So that's the first thing. When deadlines are pressing, when work is stressful, and we don't have time to do everything, if you're doing things in line with your purpose, then you're on the right track. The second thing is, as a literacy leader or an oracy leader, is to understand the importance of you. That'll be my second thing. Really, do not underestimate the importance of you as the person who's selling this, as selling your initiative, your branding, in effect. You need to understand who is it you need to make your case to. Invariably, it's not to children in the first instance, it's to staff. So be precise, be succinct. You don't need to force anything, but you should be projecting confidence. And the challenge that I had was, how do you reduce something incredibly complex with a vast amount of background research into something that is simple and understandable? So your role in leading something like this is absolutely crucial, and it's up to you in this role to create your own evangelists and understand your own importance, and then never let it go, ultimately. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, we all value the value of oracy. Obviously, of course, that's why we're in this webinar. But the power of language, value that at every single stage, and ensure that others do as well. Like, above all else, I would wager that every single person on this webinar would fall into the category of what Jeff Barton calls the word rich. We get to see the world in a way that some of us don't. We get to communicate in the world in ways that they don't see, or that they don't have access to themselves. So children will learn the methods of debate and discourse from those that they're exposed to, and typically, in many circumstances, those aren't especially good. So if friends or parents or carers or others around them aren't expecting high standards of verbal expression, then we really, really need to. And it will make a difference as well. There's a lot of talk about AI and automated functions and what that's going to be for, but certainly in the short term, that's going to be for fairly low-level task-based roles. And what I am hearing all the time from employers, because part of my other role is CIAG, is those what sometimes described as soft skills. I still know why, but those skills of communication. If we don't give children those really desirable skills, the ability to make your views clear, the ability to make the views and purposes of other people that we're working for or we're speaking on behalf of, if we can't make those clear, then we're not going to be as valuable as we could be when we do. So it's understanding the value of language. It's understanding that it is their place in the world. You know, we leave children vulnerable to being manipulated if we don't teach them to scrutinize what's being said, by whom, for what purpose, these sorts of things. And that's where, again, like the stuff on the day with the voting tab. By the way, quick caveat, I'm not like sponsored by the day or anything. I'm not being paid by them. I'm just giving examples of how it works for me. So the voting thing that we use with the day's articles, really helpful if you've had a discussion around something highly contentious, and then you vote and you find out that the rest of the nation, it seems, is voting a different way to you. That's a really useful way to teach children that you can still have valuable conversations around those things, and that your views might not align with other people. And then the other ones are fairly brief and simple. Point 4 would be give staff something really incredibly simple to do. Keep it really simple. Invariably, you're not looking for them to become experts in some sort of specific technique. Instead, you are trying to help them prioritize oracy. So what is it you want them to do? Whatever that may be. And I can talk about examples of that later if you like, but be specific, give them something simple. Point 5 ties in with that, which is understanding the role of staff CPD. And staff CPD is hugely pressured. There are so many competing forces for that CPD time. And we know what that feels like in CPD with staff, and we know what it's like to turn up. They're ordinarily in the afternoon. They're normally once a week. They normally take a long time. They're normally at a point where we're already knackered by the end of the week. So understand the importance of staff CPD, because staff are going to be the ones who are delivering this for you. And when you finish speaking, in whatever period of time you're given, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, staff need to be absolutely clear about what the next thing they do is and how that will be a benefit to children. Point 6 would be simple proof. Understand what it is that it's going to look like when it's successful, and have something really simple. Where are the biggest gains going to be? What's going to be different? Is it going to be that there'll be X amount of speaking per lesson, or children will express themselves in a different way? They'll be using tier 3 vocabulary. Whatever it is, have something really simple as your proof. You will get a feel of it, and you need to be prepared for the fact that you're going to have to respond throughout the weeks and the terms in the year, but have something really simple that you can use as your touchstone for this fairly huge nebulous research area. And then finally, I'd say look for quick, high profile, really visible, easy wins. Stuff to celebrate, stuff to promote where Oracy has had a really big impact. Look for gaps that sometimes appear where you think you can fit into that. Staff long-term absence is an absolute golden opportunity, actually, to prioritise Oracy above all else. It means that huge swathes of writing aren't put into books which are then ignored. Huge swathes of planning doesn't have to go into it. You can create an Oracy program for those lessons, which will be highly, highly valuable to those children whilst they are not in front of their usual class teacher. And again, if anybody wants anything like that, I've developed something like that for my own year 7 children at this school whilst we're dealing with our own staff absence. So I hope that's informative. That's how we've approached it here. That's boiled down to 7 points.
No, I mean, that 7 points, easy to remember. And I think for our teachers in the audience, this is exactly why we're here. These takeaways, you're doing the work, through this program. And I think that's really, really interesting. And we'll have, time to share more tips in our Q&A. I think one question that came to my mind is, I was thinking about maybe a student in your program who comes into it thinking they don't have the confidence to speak.
Yeah.
They start doing the program. What are some of the outcomes from that student when they start to see the transformation? What are the things they share with you or other peers about how they feel?
I'm amazed. Year 7's a great place to start off with these things because they've been primed for it in primary school. Excuse the pun, that was unintentional. But they've got choral speaking, and Oracy tends to be, in my experience, much more convincingly blended through the curriculum in primary school. So year 7 is a really good place to start. And what I found is that if you start quite low level, having students expressing opinions non-verbally using coloured cards or voting, thumbs up, down, all that sort of stuff, and then gradually ease them into pair talking and then table talking and group talking. Very quickly, students who have said, no, I don't want to say anything, have started, well, they just start being able to express their opinions in front of others. And we're moving to a point where all year 7 students are going to speak individually in front of all year 7. So they're going to, 145 children they're going to be talking in front of. The effect, to answer your question more directly, Matt, is you see the power of that. You know, what we are lucky enough to know, we believe, I can see Lauren even nodding in agreement, because it's difficult to, isn't it, to not feel it, the power that you have when you know that your voice is valued and be respected, but that it's powerful and it's purposeful. And last time you and I spoke, Matt, you were talking about that idea of even if your voice is shaking, you should still say it. And I've nicked that line from you actually, and I've been using it with children, that there are so many voices that are going to make themselves heard because they're the loudest. They're not necessarily the best, or they're not necessarily right. And I keep coming back to this moral purpose, that it's children understanding that their place in the world will be defined in part by their oracy. So when we have students start to value that and speaking as part of much bigger projects, you see that they grow in confidence, and then you see their writing improve as well.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and it affects every aspect of their life, as all of you have mentioned. Well, with that said, what I'd like to do, that's a really nice intro maybe to sharing a little bit about how the day can help boost Oracy. So what I'll do right now, I'm going to share my screen. I'll just say this is a really fast intro to how the day can work. And I want to show you right now, you should be able to see my home screen right there, that the day offers all these articles on a wide range of topics. And I've chosen a topic that I think is maybe of interest to young people, which of course is social media and its use. So no matter your students' interest, they'll find something to read, debate, and build confidence with as they develop expertise in a subject. And I think this speaks to sort of this idea of personal choice that Lauren was talking about and how important that is. So the day will offer any article across any subject that a young person might want. And whether it's a 15-minute form time or a longer lesson, these articles are easy to adapt to your schedule. So here's how it works. I'm going to show you. Here's one of our articles, and every article starts with a question, which you can see right there. And this is immediately sparking the potential for debate. As students read, they naturally form opinions on the topic. For instance, who doesn't have an opinion on social media use? But our content is written to hook students, making reading and discussing feel not just natural, but dare I say it, cool. So each article involves also a big debate. That's the whole point of the article, is to foster that debate. And this is where you can find the big debate, right at the end of every article we publish. We're always going to provide a pro, a con, and a nuanced perspective, creating a safe, supportive space for students and teachers to explore all sides of a topic. Now, this is really important, back to what you said, James, when it's a contentious subject, that every side in a classroom can feel safe and supported in that discussion. So this respectful back and forth is essential to helping students feel a sense of belonging, develop critical thinking, and expand their cultural capital. Now, if I go down further, this is our real USP right here. And this is where it gets exciting, our 6 steps to discovery section. So beneath every article, we're looking to strengthen Oracy skills with specific prompts. Now, these steps can be connect, wonder, investigate, construct, express, and reflect. And this can be tailored to your class's objectives, because we know that some classes are time poor, time is of the essence. How can we do this quickly? So for example, if you want students to stand up with confidence, use number 4, construct, to have them articulate their own point of view. If you want to sharpen critical thinking, then I'd suggest focusing on number 2, which is wonder, where students can create original questions to challenge what they've read. Now, as I said, this entire process can be done in just 15 minutes, making it perfect for form time every day. It's a way to ensure students are consistently practicing speaking skills while covering PSHE, personal development, or current affairs. Now, what I'm really excited to share with you is a brand new section of the day right here called Student Voices. Now, we've just launched this section where students can submit their work and receive feedback from our editors and even get published. All of these are written by students right here. And for example, this article right here, Don't Forget Suffering in Afghanistan, was written by a 12-year-old. And their work was celebrated in assembly with a book voucher from the day. So this section, Student Voices, is a fantastic way for students to feel heard and recognized and know that they have a platform where they can express their views. So I'm going to wrap it up there. If this has sparked your interest, I'd love to show you more. Again, this was just a very quick overview of how the day can work and how it can help improve Oracy. We'll share details at the end of this webinar about how to set up a free consultation with me or one of my team members, so stay tuned. So what I'll do right now is I'll stop sharing my screen and, more importantly, go back to our panel of experts to speak with you and ask more questions. And I might actually just come back in reverse order, back to James, if I may, and then we'll go to Lauren and Tina and ask, how can Oracy, and you might have covered this off a little bit, but maybe we can talk about other subjects too, but how can Oracy be intertwined across the curriculum? Because we're really interested in how speaking can be in every subject, in every avenue of a young person's life.
Yeah, well, again, I'd kind of got myself ready with some top tips for this bit, Matt. So the cross-curriculum stuff is where some of the challenge can come in. I think we've already made the moral purpose clear. So if you think about specific links with other curriculums and other faculty areas, the first thing I would say, tip one, if you will, is to understand the needs of the faculty. And different faculties, different subject areas have different requirements for their literacy and their oracy. So, for example, in science, they have far more technical language than any other subject, and it is explicitly linked to their grading. The students have to use that language, that tier 3 vocabulary, in a highly accurate way. And yet, teachers don't always have children saying the words. So, if you're not happy to even have a go at having the word, say, I don't know, chloroplast in your mouth, then you're not going to be confident to use it on a page, which is why when you've got some, wild evangelist like me in front of you with it, and children, they will try to skim over a word. You'll actually get them to say, "Oh, that's that chloro thingy." You need the teachers from the different faculties to understand the importance of stopping them at a moment and say, "No, come on, this is your word. Say it. Have a go at it. Don't worry, you're going to trip over it. I tripped over it every time." But you need the words on your tongue. You need to get used to saying these things, because if we don't say them, you're not going to use them. You're not going to use them. You're not going to write them. So the first thing is understanding the needs of the faculty, and then really speak to the faculty and really listen, genuinely listen to what it is they say are the challenges that they have for children talking in lessons. The really obvious one is children don't talk much in lessons. But conversely, we hear from teachers all the time that children are talking too much in lessons. It's not about what we want them to be. So they are happy to talk, and it's about giving them the skills to be able to speak in a really academic focused fashion. Tip 2 would be make sure it's tied clearly to serving the purpose of your overall strategy. Just because you're looking at something specific within the faculty doesn't mean that it's not tying into your big purpose, your big aim. So if you're able to say to a faculty teacher, I know that you're hammering this is great because this is serving this whole, well, I went through a big stage at the beginning of saying to teachers, when you're speaking to them about this, use the line, I want you to use this because I want you to be a confident speaker. So we kept using the phrase, I want you to be a confident speaker. I want you to use this language because I want you to be confident in your speaking. So we just kept hammering the word confident, confident, confidence. And that shows that faculty approach was linked directly to the overall strategy. Tip 3 is to make sure you've got someone in the faculty who's going to be the leader, the evangelist for you. You're going to be energetic, you're going to be passionate, you're going to care, of course you do. You've taken the time to come to this webinar. But teachers have got so much that is competing on their time, and they're going to be tired, and you haven't got the energy for the entire school. So find someone in the faculty, ECTs and people at the beginning of their career are particularly good for this. They really want someone to get their teeth into, who are going to just take one simple thing and push it for you in your faculty, in that faculty, in every faculty. And then finally, ensure that the faculty sees the value for them. That you don't want, do you? As a former faculty lead myself, I don't want to be in a situation where Matt, head teacher Matt, is walking around and saying, wow, these kids are fantastic in science. Have you heard how they're talking to each other in science? And I've gone to James's faculty and they're barely even speaking at all. Nobody wants that. So make it clear about what the value is to them and the gains that they will see. Because if you get children talking confidently, academically, enthusiastically about a subject, they will become more enthusiastic about that subject.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. A good emphasis on that. And Lauren, if I could go to you, and could you share more? I mean, feel free to speak about whatever you'd like, but I'd love to know a bit more about the assessment methodology at ESB.
Yeah, we think our assessment methodology is quite unique in the field of assessments, I suppose. So I've already spoken about our central ethos, and the thing that I think is the most unique thing about ESB's qualifications and the assessment itself is that like since the inception of ESB 70 years ago, the most important thing has been that learners are given the opportunity to be the expert in the room, so that they have that experience of being the person who is being listened to and who is being believed and who is having the opportunity to teach and to inform or to persuade or whatever it is that they are doing in that particular assessment. And we know that by doing that, they become more confident. So I've already spoken about that, so I won't sound like a broken record. But then on top of that, there is also the fact that our qualifications from level 1 and above are Ofqual regulated. So that means that they have to meet those really rigorous national standards. So, you know, we can have that confidence in their credibility and their value. Our assessors are rigorously trained, they're rigorously moderated and standardized. And so we know that we can assess oracy and we can assess speaking and listening. And that sort of contributes to be able to form a process of learners and teachers' achievements being validated. So that actually all of that teaching and learning that you're doing, it's just an extra layer to say, yeah, that's what you're doing is really valid. I mean, that's great. And then the other thing I want to talk about really is it's sort of linked into what Tina said right at the start about what oracy is and what oracy isn't. And that we're going to be really clear that our qualifications are about real communicative experiences. So they're not public speaking assessments, as it were. They're opportunities to provide what we like to refer to as real life simulated experiences of communication rich scenarios. So when we say that learners give a talk about a topic of their choice, that's exactly what it is. It's not a pre-scripted performance of a presentation. It's like a TED talk where everything, as I discovered recently, speaking to someone who had given a TED talk, it's like meticulously planned down to every single motion of the hand, like everything is scripted. It's not like that. It should be a genuine transmission of their interests and passions, and it should be in their own authentic voice. So that's and preferably from the heart, so that they just speak from a place of knowledge and transmit that information to us, obviously within a sort of framework of structure, so that their talk makes sense and is logical. And then sort of to coincide with that, the approach of the assessments being taken place in a group. So they're a group-based assessment of around 6 learners, ideally. Obviously, numbers fluctuate, but the group isn't just there for like the purpose of the real life simulated experience. So like that's what they're going to do when they go into the workplace, when they go to college. If they have an interview or if they go to university and do workshops, they're going to have these small group experiences where they are required to contribute and to sound like an expert, or to ask really important questions, or to ask insightful questions, or to listen to one another. But also, in order to succeed in the assessment and in the qualification, they actually have to support one another. So part of the descriptors, part of the grade descriptors, are how well those learners actually lift one another up. So like they're assessed on the quality of the questions they ask. And that's not just to help them to develop good questioning skills, which it is, but it's also because when they ask higher level questions, they enable their peers to give higher level answers. So they enable them to give more developed responses without the assessor necessarily needing to step in and do that, which obviously they will if need be. So, you know, they learn to ask more insightful and probing questions, but they're also rewarded for their encouragement of one another. So whether that's to showing that active listening, or asking those questions or providing positive feedback. So, and that happens from the moment they walk into the room to the moment they leave. So as soon as they walk in, if they're, you'll see them say things to like, "Oh, you'll be fine." Or you'll see them passing each other in the corridor. Like, it's not that scary. You'll be great, and that all contributes to that outcome for them. But also, it helps to build that sense of community in the classroom and in the assessment itself, which is a really nice experience for them. It's the only time as a teacher, certainly, that I've ever seen learners come out of an assessment and say, "Oh, I immediately want to do it again. I want to go do that again. It was great. It was fun." That's a new experience for me, sort of as an educator, to see that happen. And then obviously the final thing is that it is an external assessment model. So assessors are experienced professionals who come into the school, conduct live assessments. They provide learners with a fresh audience, which we found can be really helpful in that some children I was speaking to last week said that one of their favorite things was that they realized when they were nervous, they got in the room, they were really nervous. And the assessor said to them, take a few deep breaths. And then he reminded them, I have no idea what you have planned to say. I don't know what you've done in your preparation. I don't know any of that. Just when you speak, I will just hear what you say. And that is what I will listen to. And so it removes some of that fear again, and makes them more confident. But it also means that the process is consistent as well. So we know that learners in the north of England, in one of our state schools, are getting the same experience as a school on the East Coast, or on the everyone's getting the same assessment experience and the same outcomes depending on the input. And then finally, there's a real focus on positive achievement. So the whole point of the qualification is that the learners build confidence. That is sort of the point. Whilst we provide constructive feedback to them as well, obviously, to help them grow those skills, the entire process is designed to encourage them to take risks, to express themselves, and to leave the assessment feeling empowered. And I think I'm going to mention one of my favorite quotes again about the sort of idea of the external assessor coming in to listen and feeling valued. And then from our research that we did a couple of years ago, I've put a link to the impact report in the chat if anyone wants to read it. But my favorite quote one of our learners said was just like, finally, someone will have to listen to what I have to say. And it's that sort of real external validation of their voices being heard and being valued. We think that's a unique assessment experience compared to sort of writing an essay and some faceless person marking it and you never get any feedback. So that Absolutely. Is, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
It does, and it just sparks this idea that one voice, that one student now might have the agency to go off and make the world a better place. So it's incredible what can be uncovered. And I really, if there's one thing I'll take away from what everyone said, is this idea of imagine classrooms being supportive places to practice Oracy. Imagine if that's what Oracy was known to be. Oh, I'm going to get high fives. I'm going to get that positive support from my peers, my friends, my classmates. And I think that's so powerful. We see it in other arenas like sports, right? We see that kind of camaraderie, but I think that's a really interesting thing. Yeah, it's just wonderful. So Tina, over to you to talk about anything you'd like. I mean, I'm always curious about how Oracy is relevant for our life post-education and what skills it prepares students to have. If that's something you want to talk about or anything that's on your mind, I'd love to hear.
Thank you so much. I mean, James, thank you so much for sharing, what you've been doing and your top tips. And so much of what you've been saying is sort of, mirroring each other and mirroring Lauren as well, which is a fantastic sense of experience, I hope, for the people who are on this webinar, knowing that there is a community of practice out there. There is lots of expertise, different ways of doing it, different approaches, but there is a fantastic, I think, commonality in what we're all saying. And that the particular question you've asked me about post-education, and I'll mirror a few things that James has said. Really, the moral purpose of ESB was not within an educational context. we may sit now within this thing that's called an awarding organisation and give out qualifications, but that wasn't why we were started. Our moral purpose was two women in the 50s in the UK started something. They called it the English Speaking Board. And their view was they wanted to improve human connection. And they had backgrounds as speech and drama teachers. And so they felt they'd use their skill set of speech and drama teachers to create something to allow humans to connect. And the skills of communication would be absolutely at the center of that. And so they worked on this idea that Lauren's been talking about, which is personal agency, which is about personal interest, you being the expert in the room. So that moral purpose is what ESB is all about. I know we're shrouded in a world now of communication in terms of qualifications, just like schools are shrouded in pedagogy, but what gets us up in the morning is the why, the big why we're all doing this. So for me, the big why is life. It's not an educational tool. It's not an academic pursuit for Oracy. It's about your life. And James talked about, and you as well, actually, I think it was your quote. I'm not going to give him all the credit. Your place in the world should be defined by the Oracy level that you reach. And so I'd make a personal reflection. Along with my brother and sister, we're first in family to go to university. And I know that I was blessed with having some Oracy skills. I didn't have the opportunities that we give the children and the young people that we're talking about today. But I know my Oracy helped me to get to a level or give me the confidence, for example, in my case, as a kid from a state school, nobody in my family had ever been to university before, to have a go at Oxford. That was just, I mean, use a phrase, it was ballsy, but it was just about having confidence and saying, well, I'll have a go, I'll try. And part of that sense was my confidence that I could at least articulate things about myself. So it's really personal for me. It's personal for me. And I bring that into ESB. So beyond education, it's really clear. One of my jobs, I'm an employer. I give people work. I look for people who have skills to be able to communicate. I can teach them the technical things. Just as teachers, we weren't born as teachers. We all learn the skills of pedagogy, classroom management. So as an employer, I want great communication skills. In every CBI report that is produced year on year, after the technical skills that employers are looking for, it is communication, it is working in a team, it is resilience. So they're absolutely central. So the skills that we're giving children and young people are lifelong skills, just as many other things we do at school and in education are. But I think to give them an opportunity, as we've heard so much today, that these skills are taught and practiced so that children and young people have that confidence to say, I've been taught how to do this. They may not have some of the innate confidence that some of us have, but we can help them along that journey. Every one of us needs to be in the workplace where we inform, persuade, ask questions, analyze, develop, challenge. All of these things we have to do in great workplaces that we'd all like to be in, whether we go to college, whether we go to university as well, as Lauren mentioned. We have to be able to interact. We have to be able to ask questions of our teachers and of our tutors. Well, why was that analysis the best one? Why did you think that was the more favorable analysis? We have to be able to give our young people the tools to ask challenging questions. And I know the day is absolutely central to that. But I think most importantly for me is the journey to empower young people who may be underrepresented in our workplaces. And for example, we're particularly focusing in these last 5 weeks on learners with significant learning needs, because we know that in our working population, people with special educational needs and disabilities are massively underrepresented. And as employer, as along with being an awarding organisation, we want to play our part in empowering young people who may have significant learning needs to have the self-respect, the self-esteem, that the ability to communicate and to articulate your voice, your understanding, your experience of the world, which is unique to everybody, to be able to have the self-respect that work gives you, for example. So for me, you know, that question just unlocks my passion of why I love the job that I'm in. Of course, I love giving people the tools for Oracy, but I know as in my life, it can really have the ultimate opportunity to change your direction, to give you a self-belief. Maybe you are first in family doing something, maybe you are from an unrepresented group. If you have that confidence that your voice has been heard, been validated, you've been given skills, then I believe the sky's the limit. So I really do think Oracy is a tool for your life. I know that's a bit corny, but I think that's why we're so passionate about the English Speaking Board, about what we do.
Not corny at all, really inspiring. And I think this idea that Oracy is something you can always rely on once you learn it to take you anywhere you want to go. And I think you gave the answer to life. So it's applicable to everyone. And I think that's really interesting, Tina. Thank you for sharing that about your life. And I really enjoyed that. Well, we have come to the Q&A and we have questions. I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to put it to anyone who wants to snatch it up. And it comes from someone in the audience that asks, how can we involve parents and the broader community in fostering Oracy skills outside the classroom, especially for students who may not have access to language-rich environments at home? Open to anyone who'd like it.
But I'll jump in if I can. If I'm not stepping on anyone's shoes. Tina, you? Okay, thanks. Well, I learned from this during the lockdown measures, actually, where what I had a really positive response from was the reading stuff I sent out. Don't worry, I'm coming back to your point in a second, Matt, where I said that this is one of the barriers that parents and carers sometimes feel, is they don't know what it is that the children are studying, right? So I don't know how to talk to my child about what they're doing for maths. I don't know what they're doing for English. And what we taught parents and carers during that was, you don't need to know, you just need to know what sorts of questions to ask. So rather than, let's take something, really niche. Let's take some sort of Shakespeare. You don't need to know what Tybalt does in Romeo and Juliet. If your child says to you, "Oh, he's just killed this guy," the question's like, well, why? What was his motive? What drove him to that? And what's going to happen now? Well, why is that going to happen? These sorts of questions where you're trying to find out what it is you want to know are really pertinent questions for students to develop their learning, and that is Oracy. If you find yourself in a situation where you're having a conversation with your parent and your child having a conversation about why Tybalt's acted the way he has, well, that is decent Oracy. So I think equipping, make it non-scary and make it really simple. So we used to send out like a weekly top tips reading with your child at home thing, and we are now sharing like a kind of a podcast almost about our Year 7 project, to give parents things to talk about and say, these are the types of questions. You're not the answer king or the answer queen. You don't need to know the answers. You just need to know the right sorts of questions and how to question.
That's really interesting. Anybody else want to add to that, Tina or Lauren?
Sorry, I was trying to find my microphone, but it's already down. I'm doing this. This is actually something that we are interested in, but don't necessarily have solid answers to right now, I think I would say. So we're currently waiting for some feedback from parents about the impact of that doing the qualification has had on their learners. We're really interested to see whether communication at home has changed as a result of the increase in speaking and listening in school. I think for us, the answer is really that's driven by the school. So, our qualifications are a vehicle for them to do all of these wonderful things. And certainly a school we've been working with recently are doing that really well. And I know we're going to be meeting some parents soon, so maybe we might have some answers in the future, but we don't currently have those answers right now, I think. But we'd love to find out more. So if anyone wants to help us with that, certainly would love to.
Yeah, no, interesting. And Tina, could I ask you a specific question from the audience? How would you foster Oracy skills, especially from a cultural point of view?
I think, like anything we do at school, in schools, it has to be authentic. So we have to be able to role model it. And one of the things that we know we haven't really touched on today is, have we given our teachers, ourselves, the training that they require in order to feel confident to role model these things? And so often, a government will ask us to do X and do Y. And those of us who are in schools or learning groups will go, okay, but where's the training to enable people to feel confident? So I think schools who want to inspire Oracy in their school need to ensure that they give their teachers the same confidence and space to be able to learn those skills. That's why we have for example, we have those opportunities. We have qualifications that the teachers can take as well, because I think that's really central. So I would suggest, and James talked about this, it's got to be part of your purpose. It's got to be part of your school. It's got to feel authentic, but we need to support our teachers to say, how can you walk on this journey with us? If this is our journey, what do you need to be that confident, reflective, excellent practitioner? And we'll be there to support you.
What a solid and perfect point to end today's webinar. I think that's a really great way to wrap it up, and lots to think about from everyone. So I want to say, I know we're right at 5 o'clock. A really big thank you to you, Tina, Lauren, and James for joining us today for a really interesting discussion on Oracy. I think we've all learned a lot. You've given us some distinct takeaways that our teachers can use. The chat's been very active. So I want to thank the audience for being so active in the chat and giving us some great questions. Another reminder that I mentioned, we have a Black Friday offer of 10% off the day if you join before the 29th of November. So please contact the day. My team's going to put some information in the chat. We'll give you a full run through of the day, much longer than that 5 minutes, and show you how we can transform Oracy literacy and media literacy in your classroom. Also, just quickly, on Monday, December 9th, we're having another webinar on critical thinking. We hope you can join us for that interesting conversation. So again, a big thank you to everyone, including my team at the day who produced this webinar. That's Chloe and Tara, who are working on producing this. And we'll see you all soon. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you very much.